Today is Tuesday, February 14th, 2017, Valentine's Day. Now, this story I'm about to do right now is not so much about love. It's not so much about a heartwarming day. It's about a lot of fake news from the mainstream media right here in the US of A. Now, what I'm talking about is this whole Michael Flynn kerfuffle. It's a big brouhaha about what he told to the Russian ambassador before the actual inauguration of President Donald Trump, and the reaction to the White House, the reaction from the media, and reaction from a lot of different people that are just in regular society, regular normies, as you call it. Now, before I get into that, what I want to do right now is show you this video. I'm going to show you this video from NBC Nightly News, and they'll kind of break down what happened, but they add in a lot of different things that are lies, a lot of mistruths, a lot of half stories, and a lot of things that are meant to sensationalize what happened here to make the Michael Flynn situation seem a lot worse than what it is. In reality, it's not a serious situation. It was really as simple as just one thing he did. And the thing he did, I'll talk about after we get done rolling the clip. So without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
Tonight, Mike Flynn's sudden ouster raising critical new questions about the damage to national security and the Russian connection. For weeks, Flynn was giving the president talking points for phone calls with heads of state, including Vladimir Putin, threatening Iran.
As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Even last weekend, in charge of the widely criticized Mar-a-Lago dinner table conference, as seen on social media, on how to publicly respond to North Korea's missile launch, despite the Justice Department warning last month that Flynn might be vulnerable to blackmail by Russia.
You had Michael Flynn, who was, from the moment the president was inaugurated, a counterintelligence risk.
The risk, Vladimir Putin, trained by the KGB, knew exactly what Flynn had told the Russian ambassador last December, while the vice president and others did not. NBC News has learned from two former intelligence officials Flynn signaled to the Russian ambassador President Trump might ease off on Obama's Russian sanctions. Critics say that knowledge could give Putin a special hold over President Trump through his national security advisor, raising big questions about Flynn's advice to the president on Russia and Mr. Trump's startling defense of Putin.
Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
All while the U.S. is investigating Russia's hacking to influence the U.S. election.
Flynn was secretly communicating with Russian officials at the same time that Russia was attacking our democracy.
Was there a quid pro quo?
There's so many more questions that we simply don't know about the Russian involvement in our election and the possible coordination of that involvement with people in the Trump administration or close to the Trump campaign.
European diplomats say that all this is already frightening U.S. allies, no longer certain that America has their back. And Putin is already flexing his muscles, tonight violating a 1987 nuclear treaty negotiated by Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev by secretly deploying a cruise missile banned 30 years ago.
Okay, so you're able to see that. You see what's going on there. You see that, it was a lot to that piece. It was a lot that crammed into about 2.5 to 3 minutes. But I kind of want to break down what happened. First, like I talked about before the video ran, I'm going to tell you what is the whole problem here. What is the central problem? The central problem is that Michael Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador about Donald Trump possibly lifting some sanctions off of Russia after he comes into office. That's it. It wasn't no secrets told. It wasn't no secrets sold. They tried to kind of like allude to that, talking about was there any kind of quid pro quo. Quid pro quo? Why would he have to be paid? Why would he need to get something for something, which is basically what quid pro quo means, to tell the Russian ambassador an obvious thing? He didn't get into the actual minutia of what it would be. He didn't get into the details of what the sanctions that would be released could be or what else they would do for Russia. He was saying, well, maybe he'll release them. Well, what sanctions? Who knows? Who knows what he's talking about? It's a very vague statement, and it's something that everybody pretty much knew. I mean, let's just use common sense here. When Trump was running, he ran on a campaign of trying to be friendly with Russia. Over and over again, he would try to defend Vladimir Putin. He would defend the Kremlin. He would defend his association with Russia if there was any. And his whole point behind doing that was to say, hey, let's get along with countries. Let's be able to try to fight terrorists over in Syria. Let's not have these countries be suffering. Let's not be, kind of like the global cop, as I call it. You know, Trump didn't come out and say, let's not be the global police, but that's pretty much what I was getting from his campaign. And I think that anybody that was paying any kind of attention would get the same thing. All you got to do is just watch the TV, watch him at his actual rallies. So what Michael Flynn said wasn't any kind of surprise, especially because Barack Obama put sanctions on Russia right before he left. You know, you're talking about in mid-January. I mean, you had Barack Obama on TV talking about Russia and trying to retaliate against them for the so-called election hacking and etc. Right? Even though there was really no evidence of that going on. Even if people from Russia did try to interfere with the election, that's not to say that it was the Russian government. And it's not to say that it's only the Russians that did it if they did do it. And when we say the Russians, like I say, what does that really mean? Does it mean the government of Russia, or does it mean the individual that happened to be in Russia at the time where the so-called hacks happened? And like I say, it could have been Russia and China and Iran and 100 other countries that did the same thing to try and manipulate the system. And it could have been anybody, just like Donald Trump said. It could have been the 400-pound guy in his bed. And the 400-pound guy in his bed could live in Russia. He could live in Ukraine. He could live in Moldova. He could live in China. He could live in Nigeria. He could live in Burundi, Brazil, anywhere. A hacker is not really just quarantined to one location on planet Earth. So the whole thing about Russia trying to interfere with our democracy, these were, dramatic words. It's just kind of silly. It's really kind of silly. And it kind of aids in this whole Russophobic kind of thing. Yes, I said Russophobic. I use an obic myself. I think that's a real obic. Islamophobic, homophobic, transphobic. In my opinion, those aren't real obics. This whole thing about trying to paint Russia as this bad guy without too much evidence to back it up. And they want to call Vladimir Putin a killer. I mean, come on. Every nation has killers. Every nation kills people. I mean, we got sanctioned abortion, state-run abortion. Not state-run abortion, but state-funded abortion. They say we give money to Planned Parenthood and money doesn't go to abortions. Okay, if the money does not go to abortions and abortion is only a small percentage of what Planned Parenthood does, let's go ahead and just take away the federal money altogether so there's no questions of any kind of impropriety. But I digress. I'm going to get right back on topic. Michael Flynn, a mountain man out of a molehill. There's nothing really to see here, in my humble opinion. The reason why he got fired or had to resign is because it just looked bad. All he did was just talk to the Russian ambassador about potentially lifting some sanctions before the inauguration date. That's it. And then they want to make up lies talking about Mike Pence was kept in the dark for 2 weeks. Well, what did the actual administration know? The DHS told Trump and some other people that there could be a potential for Mike Flynn to be blackmailed by the Russian government, but they did not say what the reason was for their actual assertion. They didn't say that he was caught on videotape talking about releasing sanctions, on Russia before he got into office. They didn't say that. That didn't get revealed until later. So when they say, oh, Trump knew the whole time, what did he know? He didn't know anything about the phone call that was had between Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador. All he knew was that there could be something that Michael Flynn could get blackmailed for, but that can be anything. That's very vague. That's not a solid statement, in my humble opinion. So to say that they knew about this for 2 weeks and did not tell Mike Pence is just really just not telling the truth. It's not telling the truth. It's being dishonest. And it's kind of twisting words around to the way you want it to be. And then you got Elijah Cummings talking about this stuff. And then now you got people trying to bring Mike Flynn up on an investigation for having a speech at the Kremlin, talking to Vladimir Putin. It's like, come on, man. It's like, this is really silly. They're trying to make a lot out of this because there's not much to actually talk about when it comes to Donald Trump. There's much more important things that are going on. You're talking about Ukraine. You're talking about, the Baltic states. You're talking about Poland. And then they want to talk about the cruise missile that has been deployed. The news media is very inflammatory. They talk about he deployed a missile. What they mean is that he unveiled it and put it somewhere. See, the average person that's not into politics, that is not into this kind of political language, when they hear deployed, they may think that he launched it like Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They're thinking he's like that. But he just put it somewhere. And it was being developed when Barack Obama was in office, and they knew he was developing it. They tried to convince him to not develop it. Russia, that is. They tried to convince them to not develop it, but they have it now. And apparently it's nuclear, but they have nuclear weapons. So I don't understand why that's such a big deal. Like, it's a certain type of weapon that's been banned, I assume. But why is that particular kind of weapon banned when other ones are not? What's the difference between that cruise missile and other missiles that they have, other weapons that they have? Why is there such a big deal between that and that? It seems kind of like a technicality, kind of like one of these small things that try to get you on, just like Kellyanne Conway talking about Ivanka Trump stuff at the store. Oh, go out and buy it. I don't think she really understood what she was saying. I don't think she really understood that you can't do that. There's a lot of little rules that you got to adhere to over here in the U.S. And that's why a lot of people like Vladimir Putin and Rodrigo Duterte in Philippines, because they're presidents that speak their mind. They're not so much worried about walking on eggshells, political correctness. It's the same thing with Donald Trump. He speaks his mind. Even if people are upset, they're triggered or whatever, that's why we voted for him. That's why we like him, because we're so tired of people not being able to say anything. Any little small, stupid mistake you make in your speech and what you say can get you fired, can get you thrown in jail or something like that almost. We're not quite at the point where we're like Canada, where we have anti-blasphemy laws that get you locked up. And if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments below to my Canadians. But we're not quite at that point yet, but I see us kind of going there. Or at least we were before we elected Donald Trump. And I think that was kind of a backlash against that type of the direction the country was going in, to the point where you can't say anything, or else it could be the end of your career. It could be the end of your freedom. And that's just really ridiculous. And what Michael Flynn said was not in any kind of way dangerous. And if it was, then you wouldn't have people on TV talking about, oh, release the transcripts to the public, because the conversation was recorded and there are transcripts that exist between Flynn and the Russian ambassador. But if the information was so important, if it was so vital, if it was so threatening to the United States, if it was a big security risk, then why would you want to release the transcripts to the public? That doesn't make any sense. The conversation has not been public yet. All we know now is what we assume was said in the conversation. We don't even really know what was said during the conversation specifically. All we know is that he probably said something about Trump might release some sanctions, which is something that everybody already knew, because he ran his whole campaign on having low regulations and trying to get along with Russia. And then Obama put those sanctions in at the last minute, at the 0 hour. So, of course, Trump is going to try to untangle that to get along with Russia. It just makes common sense. So I'm pretty much done with it. You know, I say Michael Flynn is so unfortunate. He had to get fired, or he had to resign, or he was forced to resign, whatever happened. It's really unfortunate, but I think the liberals making a mountain out of a molehill is not really that serious. I don't remember them being this incensed when you had Eric Holder, the former attorney general, head of the DOJ, to resign because of the whole Fast and Furious scandal with him and Barack Obama. You know, his administration decided to send a bunch of guns to Mexico, like 2,000 guns from, I think it was Arizona or Mexico, one of those states. If I'm wrong about the state, let me know in the comments below, of course. But they tried to send guns from one of those states at the southern border into Mexico to try and get it in the hands of the cartels, to try and track it, to try and make it lead up to some of the high-level people. But of course it backfired and the guns are vanished. And some of them turned up in murders along the border. So I don't remember them being so intense about that. But because Michael Flynn has a conversation with a Russian ambassador on the phone talking about something that's obvious that everybody knew throughout the whole campaign. The whole world knew that. It ain't like it was some type of secret intel or anything that kind of damaged American security. It was nothing like that. It was something pretty basic, obvious, and plain. So if you want to get all up in arms about that, let's get up in arms about real things like Fast and Furious and Planned Parenthood still being funded by the federal government. How about that? So that's pretty much all I got. What do you think? Do you think that Michael Flynn should have been fired, should have been forced to resign because of what he said? Do you think it was dangerous for our country to have him say that before the actual inauguration, before he was actually in office? Or do you think it's not much to see here? It's an overblown story because there was not anything really revealed, as far as we know yet, that could endanger us as far as our security is concerned. As I close here, nobody said that it was illegal. They're just saying it was unethical. It shouldn't have been. It just didn't look right. That's what we're talking about here. You know, just optics. That's it. Not legalities, not any kind of laws being broken, not any kind of treaties being broken, not any kind of regulations being broken. No. We're talking about ethics. So if it's right, if it's wrong, if it's indifferent, overblown, underreported, whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. That's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.